Let's call what I'm about to talk about a survival guide. Friends, today we're going to have a conversation that many of us have needed for a long time, but we've kept putting it off. We live in the US, but deep down we have three uncomfortable questions. How can we participate in political life here without putting ourselves and our loved ones back there at risk? How do we talk to our children about Russia, the war, and who we are without causing trauma or lying? And how can we use local institutions, from schools to courts, so that they actually work for us and not just for show? And here's what's important. All three topics actually come down to one key thing that almost no one talks about directly. I'll spell it out at the very end, and honestly, that's the real reason why it's worth watching this video until the very last minute. Just don't skip ahead, because there are a few things I need to explain along the way, otherwise it won't make much sense. To make sure you don't miss the continuation and the next episodes on the same topic, don't forget to hit the bell. It'll be right below the video, okay? That way, the platform will automatically suggest important breakdowns for you about the lives of Russian speakers in the US, in Europe, in Israel, even in places where people walk upside down, with their heads down, and kangaroos run around next to them. I mean Australia, right? All right, let's get started. How can Russian speakers safely participate in US politics? Many of us came from a reality where politics is something dangerous. There, politics is when they come to you, not when you come to them. That's why the first reaction in the US is to stay out of politics. That's understandable, but there's an issue. Here, politics still affects you through visas, taxes, schools, war, and the dollar exchange rate. Even if you pretend that politics doesn't exist. When I arrived in Israel in 1984, I felt the same way at first. But in Israel, it's easier than in the US or Europe to fit in and feel like an integral part of the country and its events. In Israel, everyone argues with everyone. Did you arrive earlier or later? Did you never come at all, or have you been there 3 times? Your family has lived there for 24 generations. Everyone curses each other, and everyone has the same rights and responsibilities. Well, of course, there are elites. You start to find out later. A little later, I'll give you a simple warning sign, how to understand that you're already involved in politics, even if it seems to you that you're just living your life, that's all, and how to make this participation safe, which is important. That will be closer to the middle of the segment, so stay tuned. What does participating in US politics mean? It's important to separate myth from reality. Participation is not just rallies and radical posts. In the American context, to participate means this. To vote, well, if you are a citizen, to write letters and appeals to your congressmen, senators, and local representatives, to attend meetings, school board sessions, town halls, community meetings, to support organizations and media with donations, to sign petitions, to speak at public hearings. This is all politics, but not in the Russian sense where it's dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. But in the American sense, it's a normal tool of influence. The main principle, safety, is about clearly separating 3 layers of your life. First, what you do in the US within the framework of American law. Second, what you still have in Russia. Family, property, connections. And third, what you do publicly. Well, what can be found on the internet, if you have parents in Russia, especially those dependent on government structures, business connected to the government, relatives in law enforcement agencies, God forbid. Then you shouldn't start your journey with radical videos. Those could later become the basis for a criminal case against them, against your loved ones. But that doesn't mean complete silence. It just means choosing your forms carefully, instead of public calls for action on the territory of the Russian Federation. Participation in American human rights and civil initiatives, instead of naming everyone. Careful division of actions. Share your experience through organizations that know how to protect their sources, instead of a lone cry, more systematic but less risky activity. Letters, meetings, participation in local politics. Here is that promised alarm signal. If you attend rallies, participate in gatherings. Even if you just actively write in public chats, you are already involved in politics. You do it spontaneously or consciously, which means it's safe. Watch until the end. At the end, I will give one simple formula, which helps to sharply reduce the risk and at the same time increase your influence here and there. Social networks. what is really dangerous and what is not. Everything here is simple, but important. Only write what you are ready to one day see printed out on an investigator's desk or a border guard's desk. Don't write in anger. First, calm down, then formulate your thoughts. Don't include personal information about your relatives or about people who could become targets. You can't imagine how many fools there are. That's what fools do. Truly dangerous zones. Direct calls for violence. Detailed calls for action on the territory of Russia. Doxing posts. Well, that means addresses, phone numbers, personal data, opinions, emotions, criticism of the U.S. authorities and politicians are protected by the First Amendment. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're not dealing with the U.S. here. The internet remembers for a long time, and screenshots live a life of their own. Small politics, which is actually big. Many people think that politics is the White House, it's CNN. In reality, important decisions for your family are often made at the local level. What is the local level? School boards, city councils, district committees, community boards. Here's a simple example. Your child comes home from school and says, "Today we discussed the war and I was ashamed to say that I speak Russian." Instead of bursting into the parent chat, you can go to a meeting with the teacher. Talk about how to present the topic more carefully. Suggest books, materials, alternative ways to phrase things. Raise the issue at the school board level if it's a systemic problem. You are already taking a political stance, but you do it the way it's customary in the U.S., through dialogue and procedures, not through fear or yelling. How can you keep your loved ones in Russia safe? Like a short list of rules. Don't involve your relatives in your public actions. Don't pull them into the frame. Don't sign letters and petitions with other people's names. Discuss things with them honestly. You are engaged in public activity. They have boundaries, respect them. If possible, don't drag Russian government agencies into your disputes. File fewer applications and requests with the Russian Federation if you have already become an activist here. Don't get paranoid, but also don't live as if threats don't exist at all. And that's when everything you do outside comes home. As for the children, they wonder, who are we? Are we good people? Are we loved here? Whose side are we on? This is where the second, even more delicate topic begins. How do you talk to children about Russia, war, and identity? Honestly, this is the most painful part for many people. You can somehow stomach politics, you can deal with bureaucracy, but what do you say to your children, especially when they live between two worlds? I'll drop a teaser right away. Closer to the end of this part, I'll suggest a phrase you can say to a teenager to be honest, not mess up their head, and not turn them into a copy of yourself. It really works. Age and the dose of truth. The main rule is, different ages require different depths of conversation. With little children, well, up to 6 years old, you can say there are countries that are at war right now, it's very bad, people are shooting, and we are against killing and destruction. You don't need to talk about a lot of blood or too many details, that's not necessary. With teenagers, you can discuss reasons, responsibility, propaganda, and different viewpoints. It's important to acknowledge the complexity of the world, not just divide everything into black and white for the sake of it. They won't understand it that way anyway. Black and white thinking won't make sense to them. Your job isn't to dump your entire Telegram channel on your child, but to give them only as much as they can handle without panic or cynicism. Don't lie, but measure what you say. It's very tempting to say, there's no war, calm down, everything is fine. Either everyone hates us or everyone in Russia is a monster, or on the contrary, everyone in Russia is a saint and everyone here is a monster. It's better, ladies and gentlemen, to choose honest but simple wording. For example, right now there is a war between Russia and other countries, and we believe this is wrong. In any country, there are people who agree with the authorities and people who disagree. It's important for us to be on the side of people, not on the side of destruction. If a child asks, "Who are we?" don't avoid the answer, "Who are we?" That's a child's identity, and they will keep asking this question. Russian-speaking children in the U.S. have a mix in their heads. From Russian at home, English at school, heavy news about Russia, and sometimes hearing about close relatives, people they might know and love,
что-то происходит. Ну и
Jokes, stereotypes, hatred, and so on and so forth from classmates. What can you say? You live in America, and this is your country, but our family has roots here and there. It's not shameful or bad. It's a part. Just a part of you, a part of me, a part of all of us. Every person has roots somewhere. Some have roots from Belfast, some from Romania, some from Africa, and ours are from there. The state and the people are not the same thing. What the authorities do is not your personal fault. What does this have to do with you? And you didn't make any decisions about this. And by the way, neither did your parents. And you don't have to justify the decisions of politicians. You can't choose whose side you're on in a human sense. Here's that very phrase for teenagers I mentioned earlier. I trust you enough to honestly tell you what I really think, but I don't want you to be a copy of me. I want you to learn to read for yourself, to question, to argue, and not let anyone, neither me nor the government, nor your classmates, nor your teachers, nor anyone else, turn off your mind. No one. Don't let anyone turn off your mind. This phrase shows a child, a teenager, that he is an adult. And you are an adult, but not a dictator. And this, by the way, is the best antidote to future propaganda, any kind. Left, right, green, brown. Any kind. How do you talk about war without causing trauma? Practical rules. Don't send graphic videos or photos to a child. If they've already seen them, talk about how they feel. Explain that children from that country are not to blame for the war, but rather specific decisions made by adults, and usually it's a small group of people in power. Emphasize your family values. Life is more important than victory at any cost. A person is more important than the state. If, of course, these are your family's values, these are my family's values. If a child asks, "For whom?" you can say for people not to be killed or deprived of freedom for their opinions. It's important to me that this doesn't happen in Russia or in Ukraine or anywhere else. I understand there will be more questions. After that, you can explain your position, but always say why. And also add, but you have your own head on your shoulders. You have to think for yourself, not just do what someone else says, thinks, or suggests. Use your own head. They put pressure on the child at school. For example, imagine this scenario. The child is being teased because of the Russian language. They make jokes about Russians, blame the child for the war. What should you do? Listen. Never dismiss their feelings. Don't say, "Oh, it's nothing." For them, it's not nothing. It's a trauma for them. Say it directly. This is what's happening. What they're saying is wrong. You don't have to put up with this. And then, depending on their age, practice a calm response with them. Or take responsibility for contacting the school yourself. Go to the teacher, to the school psychologist, to the administration, and explain. Not just complain. Explain what's happening. And talk about it. What methods do they have? What are they planning to do? Don't leave it at, "Don't worry, we'll take care of everything." Ask, "What exactly are you going to do?" What? Maybe what they plan to do won't suit you at all. If there's no response, then involve the higher level, the system, as a tool. And here we move on to the third key part, how to learn not to be afraid of school, the police, or the courts, but to use them as intended, as protection, our protection, not as a threat to us. America, thank God, is a country where courts, the police, and schools are still, let's say, at least partially a form of protection and not a threat. The important thing I'll say at the end is directly related to whether we are ready to stop living as if we're temporary and start living as people with rights. How do we use local institutions from schools to courts? We grew up with the mindset that it's better not to mess with the authorities. You only go to the police in extreme cases. Court is for when things are really, really, really bad. But in the US, the logic is different. Institutions exist to solve problems. They're there for situations like the ones we're talking about now. And before we go any deeper, let me remind you that if you want to see more, breakdowns of specific cases, template letters, examples of appeals, don't forget to hit the bell. Otherwise, the algorithms will just suck you back into short memes instead of useful things. School is not a foreign temple. It's a place where you have a voice. What can you do? Use meetings with teachers, they call them parent-teacher conferences, to talk about the content of lessons and how sensitive topics are addressed. Maybe your child comes home and tells you something that concerns you. Find out from the teacher whether he or she really presented it that way, or if that's just how your child understood it. If that's how your child understood it, talk to the teacher. If you are not satisfied with how she presents it, ask the teacher, "Why do you do it this way? Don't you think it's one-sided?" If things don't work out and the teacher gets nervous, just thank them and say goodbye.
Prime como que
Here it's called a vice principal, or sometimes the assistant principal. Contact the school psychologist or the counselor to discuss the child's adaptation and stress. You definitely need to do this, even though we're not used to it. These people are waiting for you to come and ask them. They will share their observations, ask questions, answer you, and discuss things. That's their job. Then you definitely need to attend the school board meetings. Raise issues if the problem is systemic. What are your rights? Here they are. To demand a safe environment for your child. This is very important. And when you tell them this, they immediately become alert. They know it's important. Ask what materials are being used, how complex topics are being presented. If you find out that an anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic, anti-capitalist, or similar book is being used, find out why. Find out who provided it. You can also contact the deputy principal responsible for educational materials, whatever their title, at your school or district level. A district is what we call a region. Sometimes there are 2 schools, 3, 15, or even 700. You probably wouldn't go there. Still, you can find where to go. It's a bit more complicated to figure out there. In the U.S., the police are not a punitive authority for outsiders. They are a service that you have the right to use. It's a service when you contact the police. For example, if there are direct threats to you or your child. Assault, vandalism, stalking, and of course, threats based on nationality or ethnicity. Then, as they say, not just to the teachers at school, but to the principal or vice principal and to the police. And at school, make sure to say, "I'm going to the police," so they know. At the very least, it's important to document the incident, file a report, and get a case number so you have all of that. And evidence, messages, videos, photos, whatever you have. If it's a child who told you, ask them questions and write everything down. If necessary, seek help from NGOs that can support you when dealing with the police. The court is not your enemy. The court is a normal tool for immigration issues, labor disputes, discrimination cases, and protection from violence and threats. Court cases can be long and expensive, but there are free and low-cost legal clinics at universities. There are human rights organizations that take on cases of public importance. There are also local initiatives to help migrants. In all large companies, you can ask if they have a free lawyer available. Usually, companies allocate a certain number of hours for so-called good deeds. The main thing is not to give up by saying, "You can't change anything." You can change things, absolutely. Sometimes a single properly filed complaint can change not only your own situation, but also the practice for dozens of people after you. NGOs and community organizations. You don't have to be a lawyer or an activist to use the system. There are Russian-speaking community centers, but mostly in larger cities. American NGOs working with migrants and victims of discrimination. Human rights projects that specialize in people from authoritarian countries. Your task is to find the level where you feel comfortable. From a local center in your city to a large national organization. Here is the key principle. You are not a supplicant. In America, you are a person with rights. The biggest internal transformation is to stop feeling like a temporarily tolerated guest. You are not a guest if you live here. You are a member of society. A small cog, but part of society. And each of us is a small cog, but part of society. If you have status, if you have a green card, if you have citizenship, you are not a supplicant. You are a person with rights. And even if you are in the process, you still have basic protection. The sooner we stop interacting with the system from the position of, "sorry that I even exist," the faster it starts working for us as well. The most important thing, the reason it was worth watching this video until the end. Remember, at the very beginning I said that all three topics come together in one idea. Here it is. As long as we live in a temporary mode, stay silent about politics, are afraid to talk to our children, and don't use schools and courts, we ourselves agree to be objects rather than subjects. When we are afraid of any political activity or decision, those who are louder make decisions for us. And usually they are also more radical. When we stay silent with our children, the emptiness in their minds gets filled with someone else's myths. TikTok, television, the street. When we don't use institutions, only those who are more brazen and more cynical use them. The main turning point for Russian speakers in the US is not whether there will be new sanctions tomorrow or if the president will change. It's about when we say to ourselves, I live here, I have a voice, I have rights, I have a responsibility to my children and to those who come after me. As soon as you believe this, not just in your mind, but in your gut, participating in politics will stop being a dangerous feat and will become a normal part of life. Conversations with children are not torture, but an opportunity to raise a responsible adult. Schools, the police, and the courts are not threats, but tools. If you've watched up to this point, you've already taken a step from being an observer to being someone who wants to understand and make a difference. By the way, write in the comments which state you're in. Which of the three topics, politics, children, or protection of rights, is the most pressing for you right now? And would you like to see a separate episode with direct instructions, templates for letters to teachers, phrases for talking to police officers, forms for contacting your congressman? Oh, and please make sure to click the bell. That way you won't miss the next parts of this big conversation about the lives of Russian speakers in the US. And together we can move from fear and uncertainty to a normal, stable, and full-fledged life here. Until next time.